Hello Battle Cats players, my name is Chance and welcome to my guide. And holy moly, it has been the week of the crowd controller, am I right or am I right? Bear in mind, I am just going off of release order here, so this is kind of out of my control, but holy. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about Shaman Cat. Now this is actually a pretty dang useful cat, and I know a lot of people who have him on more or less almost all of their floating general squads. And he kind of serves more often than not as the yin to Sanzo's yang, for lack of a better term. Naturally, I'll get into all of that in a little bit here. But as always, it is my hope that throughout exploring really all there is to know about Shaman Cat, you can make a more informed decision on how to best use him, as well as how far to invest into him, if at all. Now then, let's start out by looking at his evolutionary line. Starting out with Shaman Cat himself, whose description reads, able to communicate with the supernatural, is what the wiki says, might freeze floating enemies. Then at level 10, he'll become Necromancer Cat. Turns out it was the supernatural that was controlling this cat in the end. Might freeze floating enemies. And then at level 30, with the addition of some Catfruit and XP, he becomes Necro-Dancer Cat. His bewitching dance is fueled by dark powers. Can you resist his devilish groove? Might freeze floating enemies for longer. Now then, let's move on to checking out his performance. Firstly, Shaman Cat is considered to be a crowd controller and a mid-ranger. A mid-ranger being a unit with 250 to 399 range. And a crowd controller, of course, being any unit that really inflicts status effects or knockbacks at enemies. Under pros, you have decent range, a low cost, quick attack rate and animation. And under cons, you have very low health and attack power, low freeze chance, and single target. As far as other considerations go, you have a 20% chance to freeze floating enemies for 2 seconds or 3 seconds in true form. Now then, let's check out some gameplay and talk strategy. Firstly, as far as cost is concerned, you're looking at 340 cents for Chapter 1, 510 cents for Chapter 2, and 680 cents for Chapter 3, which is pretty good for a crowd controller in general, but especially good for a freeze-based crowd controller. As far as strategy is concerned, I mean, you're going to want to use them against floating enemies, I guess is a short answer. But usually the correct way of using this cat is to use him alongside Sanzo. And Sanzo, because of his area attack, as well as some other interesting traits like his fast attack rate, basically perpetually slow floating enemies. But ultimately, freeze is better than slow. The only thing that really holds Necro back is he's not the most reliable. So it takes him a little bit longer to stack up. His range isn't also the best, so for that reason he's predominantly useful against Shy Boy, most Teacher Bun Buns, Red Cyclone, Black Cyclone, and White Cyclone. But another incredibly useful component of Necromancer Cat is he's able to use the Bony Bone combo. And you can combine this with Biohazard. Check out our Zombie Cat video for like a better breakdown on how this works. But in short, both of them are research ups, and because of that, they make units a little bit more spammable, like quite a bit more spammable. So for that reason alone, he's almost always worth taking on floating stages. But you know, it is one of those things where, in theory, depending on the stage, Sanzo himself should be fine if you've leveled him enough. Certainly if you've invested heavily enough into his talents. Now once you true form Shaman Cat into Necro-Dancer Cat, things get a little bit better for him. Firstly, there's a fairly noticeable increase to his range, which is nice, and as a result adds a fair bit more survivability to him as a unit. And while he won't outrange all of the floating enemies, he will quite a few of them. And if you stack enough of them, odds are you're going to be able to permanently freeze floating enemies, which is super nice. You're going to want like between 4 to 8 of the Necro-Dancer Cats to be fairly reliable. But I mean, outside of that, if they're properly supported, it's a pretty interesting phenomenon to watch, and has the potential to trivialize the heck out of some fights. As far as good support units for this cat go, Octopus Cat, Sanzo Cat, and Cameraman Cat are kind of the go-to. And I mean, to be fair, it's technically Necro-Dancer who's supporting a lot of these cats as well, but you know, it is what it is. Now then, let's check out some cat combos. First up, we have Pulling Strings, which is a starting money up of the small variety. It involves Necromancer Cat and Puppet Master Cat, and makes it so you start out with an extra 300 cents. I mean, frick. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe on rusher stages this could be useful, but I mean, outside of that, I see very little of any use case for this. Up next, we have Bony Bone. This is one of the aforementioned combos I was talking about a little bit earlier. It involves Necromancer Cat and Skelecat, and reduces the recharge time of cats by about a second. Bear in mind you can't go beneath 2 seconds, but this really shines when combined with Biohazard, which is essentially the exact same, just with different cats. Or a different cat, I should say. Once again, check out the Skelecat video on that. Now then, let's take a look at the Catfruit you're going to need to true form this unit. You're going to need 2 green fruit, which can be obtained every Monday, 3 purple seeds, which can be obtained every Tuesday, 2 red seeds, which can be obtained every Wednesday, 2 blue seeds, which can be obtained every Thursday, and 1 yellow seed, which can be obtained every Friday, as well as 200,000 XP. Now then, I'm just going to flash a couple of the charts and graphs pertaining to Shaman Cat and his various evolutions, as well as read out some trivia. Necromancer Cat's Japanese name, Necro-Ramansa, is a pun on necromancer, which is someone who communes with the dead. Necro-Dancer Cat is possibly a reference to the Necro-Dancer video game, Crypt of the Necro-Dancer. In its description, it also refers to how Necro-Dancer's magic causes the dead, as well as those he afflicts, to become life and dance. Very interesting stuff, and I will say, Crypt of the Necro-Dancer is an incredibly fun game with a very, very interesting premise. So if you're a fan of like 8-bit roguelites, I'd probably strongly recommend it. Outside of that, can we just take a moment to appreciate how slick the attack animations look for this cat? Especially once true formed. I mean, holy, what a good looking unit. Now then, let's talk about talents. As far as available talents go, Necro-Dancer Cat has access to Wave Attack, which adds a 3% chance to perform a level 2 wave, and it improves by 3% per level up to 30% for a total NP cost of 95. Immune to Toxic for a cost of 50 NP. Resist Freeze, which reduces freeze duration by 16% and improves by 6% per level up to 70% for a total NP cost of 75. Defense and Attack buff, which increase their respective traits by 2% per level up to 20% for a total NP cost of 75. Now, unfortunately, most of these talents are kind of useless. The first one you're really going to want to prioritize is the Wave Attack, as it kind of gives Necro-Dancer like a pseudo area attack, which they are in desperate need of. However, given the rarity of the Wave Attack and also the rarity of the freeze chance, you're looking at about a 6% chance for both occurring, which means you're really going to need to stack this unit if you want to permanently freeze enemies with that wave attack. In essence, essentially making Sanzo a little bit better. Once again, the main way you want to use this cat is alongside Sanzo, not really as a replacement for him. The only other real talent worth getting here is the Immune to Toxic, as it allows him to be a counter to Gobble, which is pretty important in the late game. However, even then, Rice Ball is usually the better option. And really, any other talent is kind of worthless here. And the reason that they're not very good just stems from his base stats. So Necro-Dancer suffers from fairly low attack stats as well as fairly low health. So increasing either of them by a percentage point here or there doesn't really make a lot of sense. In addition to that, reduced freeze is just far too situational, and if an enemy's hitting Necro-Dancer Cat enough to freeze him, odds are he's just going to die in a couple hits anyways. Or even one hit depending on what enemy you're up against. There is also the orb slot to be considered. It's really not advisable to put any orb with Necro-Dancer Cat. Although if you're trying to make sure every unit has an orb, the only real choice would be health up against floating, which could in theory lead to a hit being given, and that could lead to a unit being freezed. But that's basically about it. Honestly, this should be towards the bottom of your orb priorities. Now that you know what I think about Shaman Cat, let's hear what all of you have to say about him. Beater says, has some good use due to permafreezing in some cases, but that's about it, really good until Sanzo. Then he's pretty much hit or miss. I agree with this, although once again he is meant to be used with Sanzo in more cases than not, and with the Bone combo he actually is pretty useful even with Sanzo, and even goes a long way towards making Sanzo more viable. Courier Cat says cute, and I mean maybe, I guess, I don't know, I guess I can kind of see it. Nice6033 says good for Eldritch Forces, and that's it. Well, he does really shine in Eldritch Forces, being able to essentially permafreeze Mecha Bun Bun. I do think he has uses outside of that, but you know, it's one of those things where I guess you don't technically need him. And I'm Freaking Stupid says I haven't used him ever. And I mean, fair enough, I guess. There's once again not really a for sure 100% need for him on any one stage. However, I would recommend using him every once in a while just to test him out and get a good feel for him. And as always, if you would like to be featured in this part of the videos, feel free to check out our community tab and comment on the relevant posts. And that's about all there is to know on Shaman Cat. I think he's actually a pretty good unit. He's very, very much a supporting unit. He can't really carry on his own very effectively. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe so Cat God can bless you on your next gacha roll. And as always guys, I will be talking to you all soon.